beginning to see the tracks.
Tracks, yeah.
Now these tracks, I assume, are used as they bring the reinforcements as they get further and further along. This helps to expedite the building.
Exactly. It helps shovel out the sand and the dirt that you're seeing in here.
Right. So if we look down, if you can pan down here, I'm actually standing on what seems like tracks. Obviously, they would use something to roll along the tracks to move there. That's pretty unbelievable. All right, and again, this infrastructure is here. This wiring sophisticated behind the cement blocks. Unbelievable.
Now this is, again, we project this was millions of dollars. $3 million per tunnel.
Well, what happened to feeding the people, the Palestinian people?
Right. I mean, rather than take the cement and build schools, build homes, build businesses, instead we have a terror tunnel. We have tunnels that literally bring Hamas terrorists to the homes of Israelis.
Gaza as the ceasefire there, well, it's over. Hamas and Israeli rockets volleyed between the border within minutes after the three-day truce ended, leaving the two sides deadlocked on a potential extended peace deal. As Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warns the violence will spread across the globe if terror groups like Hamas are not stopped once and for all.
The Middle East is swept by this volatile mix. It's now almost a brush fire of terrorist organizations who are using this tactic, targeting civilians while hiding behind civilians. And we are left absolutely defenseless and we say you cannot act. I think that will ensure that the brush fire spreads throughout the Middle East, throughout North Africa, and I'd say eventually around the globe.
Ominous words.
And welcome back to Hannity. We are on the ground in Israel. We are in Jerusalem tonight. Now, with the constant fear of Hamas rockets being fired into the border city of Sderot, well, it has been deemed too dangerous for any children to play outdoors. So back in 2009, when heavy fighting was taking place, well, the Jewish National Fund, they built an indoor playground. And earlier today, I got an exclusive look at the recreation center, which also serves as a bomb shelter. And we talked to several parents and children who were there. Take a look at this. This is a children's center that they built. Literally, they get as many as 800-900 kids a day. They can't play outside, so this facility was built bomb-proof.
This is an area where kids need to go into an indoor secured facility just to be kids. Anywhere else in the world, you take it for granted. Right here, the architect wanted to have a big merry-go-round, like the one you see in Disney World and big parks.
Right.
Because it's the nicest thing. But then, by the way, I think the merry-go-round was the very first thing the architect put on paper. But then the IDF came, and the IDF had to approve everything here. And they saw the plans, and they said, sorry, you cannot have a merry-go-round. And we said, why? This is the nicest thing for a kid with the lights and the horses and the music.
They can't get off.
They said, you're absolutely right, it's very nice. There's only one problem. It takes 25 seconds to stop a merry-go-round. They only have 15 seconds to run for cover.
Repeated denials by UNRWA and by people like Chris Gunnis, who you're going to hear from after me, that the curriculum is totally innocuous, that there's nothing that espouses violence in the curriculum that U.S. taxpayer dollars are funding in UNRWA schools. And the truth is just the opposite. So what we did is we sent Palestinian cameraman to UNRWA schools so that the audience can see for themselves what's happening. And what we also did is we produced a document that's been shared with members of Congress called Exposing UNRWA, which is available on our website, that basically translates line for line the curriculum that UNRWA is using. An 8th grade textbook says, "Hearing weapons clash is pleasant to my ear, and the flow of blood gladdens my soul, as well as bodies thrown upon the ground." In the Balata refugee camp, they teach the song, "When we die as martyrs, we go up to heaven. Don't say we are children, because life has made us older." And what we've also documented is the collaboration, the direct collaboration between the United Nations Relief Works Agency and Hamas, a designated terrorist group in the United States by the EU, in Canada, and how UNRWA is literally hiring Hamas rocket engineers to serve as teachers to recruit innocent Palestinian children so they can operate as child soldiers and suicide bombers and to act as human shields.
Let me jump in here. A couple of things. The U.S. apparently gave more than $130 million to this group last year. You say you've flagged this for congressional lawmakers. You've put out the report. Why, if they are convinced, if there's evidence there, have they not stepped in to say this has got to stop?
Well, first of all, I want to mention that Canada has divested completely from UNRWA's General Operation Fund and is not allowing any type of money to go to UNRWA unless it's pre-approved for specific projects, specifically because of reports like these. And what we're seeing now is members of Congress are calling out the State Department for using American taxpayer dollars illegally. It is a violation of U.S. law, specifically the Foreign Assistance Act, for any U.S. taxpayer dollars to be used to furnish military training to terrorist groups or to indoctrinate children towards violence. And what we see, even reported by the New York Times back in 2000, is UNRWA schools allowing Hamas to come in and use the schools as military training camps for innocent Palestinian children, where they're taught how to kill and lynch Israeli soldiers, how to make Molotov cocktails. This is an egregious crime against Palestinian children, the very people that UNRWA is mandated to protect.
This is Canada. I don't care about Hezbollah. Nothing. You bring your shit over here, keep it there. Feed Israel money, feed Israel weapons, and nothing happens. I mean, and they won't stop it just because they're bombing the Palestinians and they're killing them, and they still won't stop the funding of war.
Well, it's a completely one-sided, and you've got to understand that the Israelis, they have a lobby that's the most powerful lobby in the world, and that's what keeps the politicians in business here. That we have a very complicated relationship with Israel, and I think this is a moment in history when we need to change that relationship. My reason for being here today is that my tax dollar is paying for 1,600 people dead in Gaza today, many of whom are civilians, many of whom are children, and I regret that my tax dollars is paying for that.
Well, while the president says no boots on the ground, his own generals say ISIS is actually an army, and it, quote, takes an army to defeat an army. Those militants control more cities day by day. They've even seized Iraq's largest dam. Former State Department advisor, president of the Hamilton Foundation, and now a principal for DC International Advisory. Great to see you, Christian. I've heard a lot of people say that ISA makes Al-Qaeda look like JV. What do you think?
You know, I think there's some truth to that. In a way, this group is much more interested and capable of exporting jihad. You know, right now they're looking at consolidating their own homeland, if you will, in Iraq and in Syria. But certainly much more than the Taliban and perhaps more than Al-Qaeda, they have the means and the skill and the determination and the discipline to bring jihad abroad.
So can we curtail them with simply airstrikes? Some of the generals now saying you have to fight an army with an army.
That's right, and General Bednarik, who's in charge of coordinating security with Iraq, saying that this is much broader, that this is a real army, and that's something that Vice documentary shows. These people have military discipline, they have a acumen for political warfare, they have skills for strategic communications, for internal state security to preserve the gains that they have made. Dropping a few bombs for humanitarian mission is not going to defeat this army. It's not going to shape the future of Iraq or the Middle East, which is what we should be concerned with.
They have threatened to fly the flag of Allah over the White House. I have to tell you that when I was in Egypt before the uprising there, maybe 3 years ago or so, my own tour guide at the time told me that that was the goal, at least his goal at the time, which made me a little nervous. Now we're actually hearing it from this group.
Welcome to DEFCON 3. I'm KT McFarland. ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, is on the march again. They've just seized the largest dam in Iraq, and they've seized several oil fields in northern Iraq, challenging the Kurdish region. So talking to us to make a little sense of where ISIS is going and what does all this mean to us are two gentlemen we've had here in the past. Colonel Kurt Leopold, he's a retired Navy commander and former captain of the USS Cole, and Colonel Cedric Layton, former Air Force analyst at the Pentagon. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Let me turn to you first. Commander, what's happening? Who is ISIS and how are they able to do this, and what is their goal, particularly in the north?
Well, I think what you saw, KT, was a large swath taken in both Syria and especially in Iraq as the ISIS made strategic gains in the area militarily. Then you had them slightly pause a little bit, consolidate those gains, make sure that they had the material, the equipment, and the men. They wanted to make sure they held the strategic high ground in a number of areas. And then what you're seeing now is they're going to see small areas where they can reach out, take cities, take facilities, because their long-term objective is to bring the government in Baghdad down. In order to do that, they need to create areas of instability where they can make gains, like taking that dam, that is going to achieve the objective that they want to in the long run. They're consolidating right now. They're going to continue to push and press. They want to make sure that their style of government is imposed in the regions, especially as we've seen up in Mosul. But I think what you're seeing now is just the consolidation of their power.